My name is Kevin McCarthy. My wife is Gail. When my story began, we were both 27, married for 6 years, and had no children by choice. I won't bore you with the details of how we met. It was typical of thousands of other relationships. We met, liked each other, fell in love, and got married. At the time of our wedding, I would say that we were very average. Neither of us had to fight off the opposite sex, but neither did children and dogs run away from us squealing. We had sex cozy 3-4 times a week. It wasn't entirely boring, but they definitely wouldn't have made a series on Cinemax about our sex life. Usually we had sex in a normal position, sometimes in others. After 6 years of working behind desks, we were both a little out of shape. We weren't exactly candidates for a fat boy farm, but it would have been entirely possible if we hadn't done anything. Gail, I said. I was looking closely at myself in the mirror and noticed that I had a belly. I think I need to go on a diet, maybe start running or join a fitness club or something like that. This is stupid, Gail said. We're not kids anymore. Is it normal to gain a few extra pounds as we get older, or is this your sneaky way of telling me I'm getting fat? No, not at all. I just think it wouldn't hurt for both of us to get in better shape. I thought she was going to throw something at me, but she just turned back to the stove. Looking over her shoulder, she said, "Do what you want, just don't drag me into this." Unfortunately, there was nothing I could do to help us eat healthier. The best I could do was cut out her high cholesterol breakfasts, eat salads for lunch, and reduce my dinner portion. I started running and joined a fitness club. I tried again to get Gail to join me, but she still refused, and not very politely. This was hard. I never played organized sports, only played basketball or softball occasionally, and the only running I practiced was when I had to catch the bus. The gym was a completely different matter. It was like entering another world. I was confused by all these strong bodies and didn't even know where to start. Julie, one of the staff, was very helpful. She showed me the different machines, how to use them, and what parts of the body they worked. She convinced me not to be embarrassed that not everyone started out with a strong body. One of the discoveries for me was that I like to run. Getting out into the fresh air, just going with the flow, I find that running clears my mind. Often I would start a run thinking about a problem and find a solution by the end of the run. It was a little frustrating at first. I was exhausting myself with little results. Suddenly, it was like a dam breaking. I could have done one more set, or I had more strength at the end of my runs. I started to notice a difference in my body. One strange thing I noticed was that as I got into better shape, Gail became less and less interested in sex. I would have thought that my more attractive body would have turned her on, but instead she seemed to feel somehow threatened by it. As I lost weight and gained muscle, I realized I needed a new wardrobe, which seemed to make Gail even more unhappy. "Don't you think we have better ways to spend our money than on new clothes?" she said. I couldn't think of a good answer, so I just shrugged and walked away. I couldn't help but notice the admiring looks from the women in the office, but despite Gail's attitude, I considered myself happily married and off the market. I noticed that Gail seemed to be getting depressed and tried to talk to her. "Gail," I said, "what happened? You seem so sad all the time. I'm worried about you. Why don't you want to talk to me? You just look so young and beautiful, and I'm just an old rag. I'm afraid of losing you to some young bitch." "Gail, I tell you all the time that you are an attractive woman and I love you. But if you're not confident in yourself, why don't you go to the club with me? I would be too embarrassed next to all these strong bodies." "Gail, first of all, they're not all tough bodies, and most of them didn't start out that way. They had to work at it." "Sorry, Kevin, I just can't." I was stumped. I brought her flowers every week. At least once a week, I would go to her office to take her out to lunch. Then one day, she amazed me. "Kevin, please don't come to the office again." "I'm sorry, what? Why?" "I like having lunch with you." "It's because of the way other women stare at you when you walk in." "I thought you'd like it when other women are jealous of you." "I liked it at first, But the last time I was in a stall in the ladies' room, I heard Sally and Jane talking. So what were they talking about that got you so upset? She hesitated to speak, so I put my arm around her, pulling her towards me. She started crying, and I could barely understand her through her tears. Oh, they said things like, "What's a hottie doing with a wimp like Gale? God, I wish I could take him for a ride, but he doesn't even notice anyone but her." "Why do you care what they think?" I said. "Besides, didn't you hear what they said? You are the only one for me. I see what's beneath the surface, and that's the woman I love, the only woman I'll ever love." I hugged her tighter, giving her a gentle kiss on the top of her head until she fell asleep right on my shoulder. I was confused. Obviously, I wanted her to get into better shape, but only for the sake of her health and self-confidence. My love for her was unconditional. It didn't depend on her appearance. She was a contradiction, upset and insecure about her appearance, but unwilling to do anything about it. What's worse is that our sex life, which was already getting worse, got even worse. Nothing I tried worked. I bought her sexy lingerie, which she refused to wear. I bought scented massage oils to give her a sensual massage, and she fell asleep. I admit it was disappointing, but I believed strongly in fidelity and in our marriage vows, including for better or worse. We somehow delayed. Despite my disappointment, I continued to try to support and encourage her, but it was a losing battle. The office Christmas party was approaching, and despite her objections, I took Gail shopping to buy her a nice dress. The party was quite awkward. Gail could barely let go of my hand. The only times she would let go were when one of us needed to go to the bathroom or when I went to get drinks. Her eyes constantly darted, looking at other women with envy. Her anger could hardly be contained if she thought that someone was looking at me. She reluctantly danced a few dances with me, and the rest of the evening we just watched other couples dance. While we were sitting, Sharon Gomez, one of the colleagues, walked up. "Excuse me," she said to Gail. "Do you mind if I dance with your husband?" "As you wish," Gail answered, dissatisfied. "Would you like to dance, Kevin?" Sharon asked. "No, thanks," I said. "I'll stay here with Gail." This happened a few more times, and Gail seemed more and more irritated. "Kevin, I'm tired," she said finally. "Please take me home." "Of course, honey," I said. "I'll get our coats now." On the way home, she became angry. "Why didn't you dance with these bitches?" She bared her teeth. "You obviously wanted to." "It's not like that, dear," I said. "I only wanted to be with you. That's why I refused them." "Then why did they keep coming?" "They must have had a good laugh at Kevin's fat cow." "Gail, they were just being friendly. They saw that we weren't dancing and thought maybe I'd like to dance while you rest." "Yes, of course. Friendly, yeah," she said, turning her back to me and looking angrily out the side window. We drove the rest of the way home in tense silence. The car had barely stopped in the driveway when she jumped out and slammed the door. She was in the house, slamming the front door before I could even get out of the car. Even though I had the keys to the house, I was glad that at least she didn't try to lock me from the outside. If I thought our sex life was bad before, it was about to go into deep freeze. Any attempt at intimacy was resolutely rejected. When I joined her in bed, unless she was already facing the wall, she immediately turned her back to me, and if I tried to press against her, she roughly pushed me away. I stopped trying to get her to eat healthier and exercise, but despite my forced abstinence, I refused to look for other partners, although I had many opportunities. I didn't know it at the time, but despite my best efforts to convince her that I still loved her and found her attractive, her low self-esteem caused her to seek solace in the arms of other men. I still don't know how long she cheated on me, but I finally caught her, and her reaction was not at all what I expected. Despite her request not to come to her work anymore, I bought flowers and decided to invite her to lunch as a surprise. Well, it was a surprise, but not at all what I expected. As I approached her office, I heard the usual office hubbub, but as soon as I entered, it stopped. I saw that Gail's desk was empty and looked around the office looking for her. One of her colleagues, Sally Cohen, motioned me with her eyes towards the boss's office at the back of the office. I headed towards the closed door, and the sounds I heard immediately made me aware of what I would find. I struggled with myself, but in the end I decided that I had to see everything with my own eyes, and I opened the door. I can't imagine why it wasn't locked. Maybe they didn't care. As much as I thought I was prepared, nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. She stood over the boss's desk, her eyes closed, her shirt and bra pulled up and her breasts hanging down. Her skirt was hiked up to her waist, and she was not wearing panties. She cried, take me harder." When I dropped the flowers, the vase broke on the floor. They both looked up, surprisingly showing no shame at being caught as Gail added insult to injury. "Well, you finally got me," she said mockingly. "Now you know what it's like." "What are you talking about?" I asked. "What does it feel like?" "Being deceived, of course," she said. "Did you really think I was stupid enough to believe you weren't sleeping with those gym bitches?" "But I didn't cheat. What made you think that?" "Well, you definitely don't satisfy me at home." "Only because you won't let me, but I take our vows seriously and would never change. I would ask you to provide evidence, but I know you don't have it because nothing happened." Gail just looked at me silently, then said, "Keep going, John." John stood there in disbelief for a moment, probably wondering if I was going to hit him, then began to slowly continue. I turned and walked out of John's office with my head down. I didn't even try to close the door. They didn't care, so why should I? Sally caught my eye and whispered, "I'm sorry." I nodded in gratitude as my tears began to flow, and I left the office as quickly as possible. I was lost. I loved Gail with all my heart, even when she pushed me away. One thing I was not going to do was tolerate her infidelity. The situation had reached a climax, and the future of our marriage was in doubt. I tried everything I knew. There will be no more passive drifting with the flow. I went back to my office, but I hope I wasn't working on anything important, because I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I came home, grabbed a beer, and sat in the darkened living room, taking only a few sips until the beer was warm. Gail entered, this time much more reserved than the last time I saw her. "Kevin," she said, can we talk?" "What's the point?" I asked. "You made your position clear." I watched as she mentally went through all the usual cheater excuses, realizing she had nothing she could say, then sat down heavily with her head in her hands. I left her there and went to the closet in the hallway, took out suitcases and bags for clothes. As I dragged them past her into our bedroom, she stood up and followed me. I started throwing things from my dresser drawers into suitcases. "What are you doing, Kevin?" she asked after about 3 minutes of my silent packing. "I'm leaving, at least for a while. I've put up with your bullshit for months. I tried to support you and be attentive. I never complained when our love life fizzled out. But what did I get in return? Accusations of cheating while you cheated on me. Are you going to divorce me?" "Honestly, I don't know. God knows I should. It sure would be fair. But God help me, I still love your worthless ass. I definitely can't stay here. Do you have my phone number? In the meantime, I suggest you take a good look at yourself. Maybe seek professional help." With that, I saw her anger return. "What, are you saying I'm crazy?" she exclaimed. "I don't know," I said. "It's beyond me, but you certainly weren't being very rational." As I turned to leave, I heard her cry, "Please don't go." I hesitated for just a moment, then walked towards the door, closing it behind me. Was I closing the door on my marriage? I didn't know, but ultimately it was in Gail's hands. I found a decent hotel for an extended stay that wasn't too expensive and sat down to take stock of the ruins of my marriage. Gail sent many text messages, emails, and voicemails. I read or listened to them all, but there was nothing in there that really changed our basic situation. I threw myself into work. Several people knew about my situation, so soon the whole office knew. Not even a day had passed before some lonely and not so lonely women started creeping up on me, but I wasn't ready for that yet. At the end of the week, I sent her an email with a list, not really demands, but suggestions of things she should consider, not only to get me back, but to improve her own life, with or without me. The first thing I knew she would encounter with great resistance was to see a psychologist, try to get to the root of her self-esteem problems, and understand why she could convince herself that I was cheating, so much so that she felt justified in her cheating. I thought the second might cause an even worse reaction, lose weight and get in shape. I made it clear that this was not because I thought she was fat or turned me off with her weight, but for her own health and self-respect. I didn't expect her to accept it, but it was the truth. I told her that I would be putting half of the mortgage, homeowners' insurance, and utilities into a joint account. She will be responsible for the rest and her own food and car expenses. As expected, I received a loud voice response full of indignation and ignored it. I thought about giving her a deadline, but decided against it. I didn't want to be in a situation where I would have to back out of the deadline and weaken my position. In my head, I set a time limit of 6 months to see significant improvement. I wasn't sure what it would look like and wanted to give myself some flexibility. A few days after sending the letter, her sister, June, called me asking to speak with me, and I agreed. We met at a local bar after work. "Kevin," she said, "what's going on?" Gail panics. She said you left her. "Did she tell you why?" I asked. "Not really. She just said she did something stupid and you got angry and left." I took a deep breath. I wasn't sure how much of our personal life I wanted to share, but June was a good daughter-in-law and became a good friend. Maybe she could help. "June, as you know, I've been trying to get in shape." "Yes, Kevin, we noticed everything. We're all proud of how well you did." "It looks like not everyone." Gail seemed to object to this. "That's not true, Kevin. Gail was always bragging about you." "Well, you wouldn't prove it to me. It seems that the more I got into shape, the more it moved away. I don't think she told you about our personal life." Um, uh, I'll take that as a yes. She was shy. But I wasn't shy enough to cheat with some scoundrel." June looked startled. She didn't say anything about it. "Listen, June, I love Gail. Yes, I wanted her to work on herself, not because I didn't love her for who she was, but for the sake of her own health and self-esteem. Instead, she pushed me away more and more, was irrationally jealous, and baselessly accused me of cheating. Then I found out that she cheated on me. I don't know what to say, Kevin. I know Gail adores you, and this separation is killing her." "June, do you really want to help Gail?" "Of course I want." "Then talk to her. Convince her to get counseling. I don't know if we have a future if she doesn't get help." "I will do my best, but please give her time. Don't do anything hasty." "I won't, but I can't wait forever. Time is ticking." We exchanged a brief hug and went our separate ways. There was no official contact for a couple of weeks, although I heard that her parents had to help her with some bills. I heard from June that she finally convinced Gail to get help, and she started seeing a therapist. It was too early to tell how much it would help, but it was a start. I talked to Gail at least once a week. It was difficult to judge just from a phone conversation, but therapy seemed to be helping. She seemed much more balanced. She still wasn't doing anything to get in shape, and it was starting to annoy me. Despite my disappointment, I was still hopeful, so I resisted the urge to start officially dating, but I started joining group activities just to be social. Sometimes it was dinner and a couple of drinks on a random Friday after work. Always a mixed bunch, and I tried not to spend too much time with any one woman too often. It was completely innocent, and it helped me get out of my funk. I was in such a good mood that I even began to feel better about the fate of my relationship with Gail. What I didn't know. One Saturday, a group of me and I decided it would be fun to go back to our childhood and spend the day at a nearby amusement park. When we got off one of the crazy rides, we were all a little dazed, and Sharon tripped and fell into my arms, right in front of Gail and June. "Get away from my husband," Gail shouted, waving her bag. When several guys defended Sharon, Gail turned her wrath on me. "I knew you were having an affair," she shouted, "but I felt guilty for cheating on Mr. Perfect. Well, the truth has finally come out." She turned and cried on June's shoulder. "I have no idea what you're talking about, Gail," I said. "I'm just here with some work friends." When Gail turned around, half a dozen hands went up. "This is Henry, Sharon's fiancé," I pointed to Henry, who was hugging a sobbing Sharon. "Now that you've completely ruined what should have been a fun day, why don't you go away and leave me alone?" As I turned and walked away, I saw June leading a crying Gail toward the exit as the crowd that had gathered to watch the conflict dispersed. I was absolutely devastated. Thank God I wasn't driving. I probably would have swerved off the road. Henry and Sharon dropped me off. "Are you going to be okay, Kevin?" Sharon asked. "As always these days," I said with a sigh. "How are you? I'm so sorry you got caught up in this." "I'm fine, Kevin. It was more of a shock than anything." I leaned towards the window and shook Henry's hand, while Sharon gave me a kiss on the cheek, then watched them drive away before pulling myself into the house. I was shocked to the core, but the big question hung in the air. Was this a step back, perhaps fatal, or could this shock be what awakened Gail? There were a few missed calls and messages on my phone, but I was too exhausted to deal with them right now. I took a long, hot shower and fell into bed. The next day, I woke up with renewed determination. Although I wasn't quite ready to give up on Gail completely, I decided that I would no longer put my life on pause indefinitely. I had no intention of getting involved with anyone at work, but Sharon insisted that she introduce me to some of her single friends, and when I came into the office on Monday, I gave her the go-ahead. Sharon gently brought me back into the dating circle, arranging meetings with several of her single friends and relatives. Although they were all generally pleasant to talk to, I didn't feel particularly connected to any of them. None of the meetings lasted more than 2 or 3 dates, some even less. I could see that Sharon was starting to get annoyed with me. "What the hell are you looking for, Kevin?" she said. "Most guys would jump at the chance to be with any of these women." "Honestly, I don't know, Sharon. None of them felt right." "Ah, maybe you're still too attached to Gail," she said as she left my office. "Maybe." I thought, after everything she did to me, do I still want Gail? I spent the next couple of days thinking about what Sharon had said and, while relaxing with the Sunday paper, was alarmed by a knock on my front door. I went to open it and stepped back. It was Gail. I received periodic calls from June giving me updates about Gail. Gail seemed quite embarrassed about her behavior at the amusement park. She recommitted herself to therapy and was making some progress. She also signed up for a gym, but I was starting to think it was too little, too late. Once I got over the shock, I stepped back and waved her in, closing the door behind her. I couldn't help but notice that she had lost quite a lot of weight. "Would you like some coffee?" I asked her. "Yes, please," she replied nervously. After I set the coffee to brew, I laid out a few snacks, and we sat down at the table, neither of us quite ready to start a conversation. When the coffee was ready, I prepared her mug the way I remembered what she liked and brought the cups to the table. "You look good, Gail." "Thank you. I finally took your advice and started studying." "Well, it definitely works. So what brings you here?" I was wondering, hoping if we still had a chance." "I'm afraid this is a very difficult question, Gail. I started dating." Gail's face fell, and she looked like she was about to cry. "Nobody's serious, and I'm really glad you're working on yourself. I only wish you'd done it sooner. Now, I'm afraid this may be a case of too little, too late." If I thought this would help, I was sadly mistaken, as Gail dropped her head into her hands on the table and began to sob. I was torn. On the one hand, I firmly believed that she herself created this situation, but on the other hand, this was the woman whom I loved with all my heart for more than 6 years. Should I just reject her? I realized that I might be making a huge mistake, but I invited her to have dinner together. She almost knocked over the coffee cups when she rushed to hug me. "Yes, yes," she said, I would really like to. How should I dress? What time will you pick me up? Nothing too fancy, I said. A little better than jeans and a t-shirt, and I'll be there at 6. With that, she was halfway out the door before she came back, hugged me and kissed me, and then disappeared instantly. What the hell was I thinking? I said to the empty house as I went to get ready for a date with my ex-wife. I pulled up right at 6 o'clock, and before I could even get out of the car, she bounded out wearing tight jeans that showed off her butt, a pair of high-heeled sandals, and a white blouse unbuttoned to the middle of her generous cleavage. She clearly tried her best. I managed to get out of the car in time to open the passenger door for her, and she wasn't shy about giving me a deep view of her cleavage. As sexy as she was, I started to think it was a mistake, that she was expecting more from this date than I was willing to offer. Dinner was generally pleasant, although the conversation kept turning to her, "I'm so sorry," and her sexual innuendos. One particularly painful topic arose when I suggested that she should not pin all her hopes on getting back together with me. "Are you trying to tell me that it's over between us?" she asked, barely holding back tears. "No, not really," I said carefully, "but our relationship has gone through serious tests, and I'm not sure that it will be so easy to restore it. I'm really proud of the way you've worked on yourself, and I'm not saying there's no hope, but you have to be prepared for the possibility that it might not work out. You should look for other relationships that don't carry our baggage." Her tears were flowing more openly now, but she nodded. I understand, Kevin. It will be difficult, but I will try." She was clearly disappointed when I insisted on driving her straight home after dinner, but she perked up when I walked her to the door. "Are you sure you won't come for one drink?" she asked, blinking her eyes at me. "I don't think that's a good idea right now," I said. She wrapped her arms around me, pressing her still impressive breasts against my chest, trying to kiss me like she wanted to pull out my tonsils. As she pressed her thigh against my groin, eliciting the expected reaction, I was able to muster enough strength to gently push her away. "Very impressive, Gail," I said with a smile as I ran to my car and headed home. I still wasn't sure the evening wasn't a huge mistake, but time would tell. I decided it was best not to tell Sharon about my date with Gail when she walked into my office Monday morning and closed the door. "So," she said, "did you finally get your head out of your ass?" "Good morning to you too, Sharon." "Don't be smart, Kevin. I have a special friend for you, and I don't want you to ruin it. I won't bother if you don't think you can give her a chance." "It's not fair. I gave everyone a chance. It just didn't work out." "Well, we'll see," she said. "Don't plan anything for Friday night." I stood up and saluted. "Yes, ma'am," and she showed me the fig as she left my office. Sharon surprised me by not going on a traditional blind date, but by inviting me to dinner at Henry and Sharon's house on Friday night to introduce me to her friend Marilyn. She wisely decided that this would help avoid the awkwardness of the first date. Everything went surprisingly well. Marilyn was a charming dinner companion, attractive and well-figured. She wasn't going to take Tom Brady away from Geisel, but I'm not Tom Brady either. It went so well that I asked her out on a real date the following Friday, and she said yes. I returned home feeling more secure than I had in a long time. When Sharon walked into the office on Monday, she was almost sparkling with excitement. She had lunch with Marilyn on Sunday, and apparently I passed her test as well, which isn't surprising considering she accepted my date, but apparently I passed more than just a pass. But excellent. I was as nervous as a high school student when I walked up to Marilyn's door holding a bouquet of flowers. If I had found her attractive at Sharon's house, now when she opened the front door, I was struck by the sight before me. She was wearing a relatively modest little black dress with shoes that, while not exactly CFMP, still showed off the shape of her legs nicely. "These flowers are beautiful," she said, inviting me inside with a warm hug as she searched for a vase to display them. She placed the flowers on the coffee table, wrapped a shawl around her shoulders, and we headed to my car. Over dinner, it felt like it hadn't been a week since we'd spoken at Sharon's, although the conversation had become much more personal. She listened sympathetically to my sad story and then told her own. I've been engaged twice, she said. Both times they cheated on me. The first time because I didn't want to sleep with him. I promised my parents I would save myself until marriage. He said he understood and respected my decision. This continued until I caught him in bed with my best friend. He looked over his shoulder at me, seeing my tears on my face, and laughed at me. The bastard was really laughing at me. You weren't thinking, in fact, I can do without this for 6 months, right? He said, and then proceeded to have her right in front of my eyes. I threw him the wedding ring and ran outside. It took me a year before I could start again meet. Once I did this, it was a long time before I could start again trust. When I found a man who I thought was the one, I thought I could avoid doing the same thing. A mistake in letting him take my virginity. Although it was uncomfortable at first, I began to enjoy sex and thought Stuart was satisfied too. It turned out that I was too vanilla. Fortunately, I didn't catch him red-handed, but that was the end of our relationship. I was a little older and wiser and started dating again pretty soon, but kept everyone at a distance, not allowing myself to get too involved with anyone. Well, as you know, I said, this is my first date since I broke up with Gail, and the jury is still out on where we're going, so you definitely don't have to worry about me pushing you. I understand, she said. Why don't we just take things one step at a time and see what happens? I nodded in agreement, paid the bill, and we went to a nearby nightclub to dance. None of us were interested in fast dancing, but as soon as the DJ played a slow number, we hit the dance floor. Marilyn danced much better than me. I was more of the hold and move to the music school of dance. Marilyn was having none of it, and soon I began to look like I knew what I was doing. To be honest, I'm pretty sure Marilyn still got more attention than me. We finished, and I walked Marilyn to her door. She kissed me warmly goodnight, and her lips tasted so sweet that I wanted to try more, but we both knew it was too early. I knew that renegotiation relationships were inherently risky and that I should at least date more women, but I felt such a connection with Marilyn that I couldn't imagine there could be anyone better. During one of my semi-regular meetings with June, I decided to find out how Gail was doing. Kevin, she's dating, but I'm afraid she's just doing something. I think she's just treading water, hoping she can get you to take her back. None of the men she dates last more than a few dates. I think they can tell that her heart just isn't in it. A curse. I really needed to work things out with Gail before things got too far with Marilyn, but Gail wasn't making it easy. Although our post-date activities had progressed into some pretty heavy making out, I didn't feel comfortable moving on without resolving my situation with Gail. I was glad to hear from June that Gail was still dating. She still missed me and hoped that we could get back together, but she pulled herself together and wasn't as depressed anymore. June mentioned a cute guy about our age who seemed to be staring at Gail in the therapist's waiting room, but June didn't think Gail even noticed. In the meantime, I received some warning signs from Marilyn. After the date, as we sat on her couch during one of our makeout sessions, she brought up the topic. "Kevin," she said, "don't you think I'm sexy?" I was dumbfounded, to put it bluntly, stupid. "Oh, of course I do," I exclaimed. "You're the sexiest person I know." "Then why don't you do anything about it? We've been dating for weeks, and you haven't even tried to take your top off with me." I stuttered. "Perhaps it's not entirely your fault. I could just take it off myself. But I'm an old school girl. I like it when a man takes the initiative." Finding my voice, I tried to explain. "I wanted to, believe me, but I didn't think it was fair to you." "Honestly, what do you mean?" "I haven't fully figured out my relationship with Gail yet. A week before our dinner at Sharon's, I invited Gail to dinner in an attempt to negotiate some terms with her." "What have you come to?" Marilyn asked with tears. "I've decided that I want to be with you, but I still worry about Gail. She's made a lot of progress, but she's still very vulnerable. Despite everything, I still care about her as a person and don't want to hurt her." "I don't know if I should be jealous of Gail or proud of you," Marilyn said through tears. I think it's a very honorable relationship, but if you don't take me to bed now, I'll take you right here. At this point, my little brain began to do the thinking for me, and after I picked her up and kissed her passionately, I followed Marilyn into her bedroom, shedding her clothes along the way. Marilyn's body was even more incredible than I could have imagined. She wasn't model thin, but she had an earthy, feminine shape with the smallest, sweetest belly and round hips. When she turned to me, I saw that she had a beautiful round butt, which I wanted to grab with my teeth and fingers. Her breasts weren't huge, but they blended well with her body. I came back from my thoughts when Marilyn spoke. Well, are you going to watch this all night or do something? At this, I grabbed her and threw her on the bed, climbing next to her. Despite my workouts, I wasn't particularly proud of my body, but Marilyn seemed impressed as she ran her hand over my chest and down to my abs. I didn't have a real six-pack, but there were some outlines of it. Then we started having sex. It was the most beautiful thing, darling, she said. Yes, I said. It was definitely the best thing in my life. Then we had sex again. Ugh, we're all wet, she said. Let's run to the shower. She jumped out of bed and ran to the bathroom. Hey, this is cheating, I shouted after her while she laughed at me. I caught up with her in the shower, pinned her against the wall, and had sex with her again. I was exhausted and needed Marilyn's help to cleanse myself and get ready for bed. I could only sit while she undressed and made the bed. Then I climbed in and spooned her, cupping her breast with my hand. I woke up slowly, gradually remembering the events of the previous night, enjoying the feeling of Marilyn's body next to me. All too soon, nature took its course, and I went to the bathroom to empty my bladder and wash my face. When I came out, Marilyn was still sleeping, so I headed into the kitchen to see what I could make for breakfast. I started reaching for my clothes, but I thought, why? While I was preparing breakfast, Marilyn came into the kitchen, following the dress code. Coffee, she moaned. I need coffee. I placed the large mug in front of her as I sat down with my own. Ah, she said, taking a long sip, the nectar of the gods. I served us both a plate of scrambled eggs and toast, and we ate in silence. Finally, I broke the silence. Well, I don't know what exactly Stuart was looking for, but if this is too vanilla for him, then I'm scared to introduce him to Tutti Frutti. Marilyn almost choked on her coffee. Well, I might have learned a couple of new tricks since we broke up, but I don't think anything short of whips and chains would satisfy him. Now it was my turn to choke on my coffee. I think I like a little kinky sex as much as the next person, but some of these people scare the crap out of me, I said. Amen, said Marilyn. So where does this leave us? I hope this keeps us together for a long, long time, I said. You know what I mean, she said, throwing her napkin at me. What are you going to do with Gail? Oh hey, this was the question I was hoping to avoid, although I knew that sooner or later it would have to be addressed. We were still married, damn it, damn, what should I do now? The last time I talked to June, she said Gail was doing better, but I wondered what this news might do to her. I chose the path of a coward. I called June. I asked her to meet me after work, and I think she sensed that this was not good news. I arrived first and took a quiet table. June arrived shortly after. The waitress took our drink orders, and when she brought our drinks, I told her we didn't want to be disturbed. If June wasn't worried before, her look told me she knew what was coming. June, I said, I think you know why I wanted to meet you. She nodded sadly. June, I've met someone and we're serious. I'm afraid I can't wait for Gail any longer. I know it's impossible to completely avoid pain, but I'd like to keep it to a minimum. Do you have any ideas? I wish I could, Kevin. Like I told you, she's dated men, but nothing serious. She still doesn't notice that guy in the waiting room, even though I hinted. Damn, I need to tell her. It's not fair to leave her in the dark. Do you think you could get me a meeting with her therapist? Maybe she'll have some ideas. I'll try, but I don't know how much she can help, given the privacy rules. I understand, but I can't think of anything else. June, true to her word, made time for me to see Gail's therapist, with the expected reservations. I arrived at the therapist's office and was warmly greeted by an attractive middle-aged African-American woman as I shook her hand. "Thank you for agreeing to see me, Dr. Johnson," I said. "I understand that this is quite unusual." "Please call me Althea," she said. "May I call you Kevin?" "Finally, Dr. Althea. Well, you asked for this meeting, but you understand that I can't talk about the details of Gail's case." Yes, I understand. I assume Gail has told you the basics of our situation." Althea sneezed. "My problem or question is that while I am very happy for the progress that Gail has made both mentally and physically, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, I'm involved in a relationship with another woman. It seems serious, but I'm afraid of the impact it will have on Gail. If I don't break things off with Gail, I'm afraid I'll just lead her by the nose, and that won't be fair to her either." Althea sighed. "I don't think I'm breaching confidentiality by telling you that your concerns are valid. Gail is still in a very fragile state, and I'm afraid your concerns about the impact of your announcement are accurate. However, I also agree that leading her by the nose by giving her false hopes will only hurt her in the long run. The sooner she starts working on her life after your relationship, the sooner she will recover." "Thank you, Althea. Here is my business card. Please feel free to call me if you feel I could be of assistance in Gail's therapy." "Thanks, Kevin. I'll keep that in mind." We shook hands, and as I walked through the reception area, I saw a man about my age with a young girl. The girl got up to go into Althea's office as I was leaving, wondering if this was the man June had mentioned. I called June to tell her the news. We decided that she should be there to support Gail as much as possible. I knocked on June's door, and when she opened, I saw Gail sitting on the couch with hope in her eyes, but she must have read the look on my face, and the tears were already starting to form. June sat next to her and put her arm around her shoulders while I pulled a chair to the opposite side of the coffee table. "Gail," I said, "I think you know why I'm here." She nodded slowly, sniffling and holding a handkerchief to her eyes before blowing her nose. "First of all, I have to tell you how proud I am of the progress you've made. I know it hasn't been easy for you." She nodded again, still snoring quietly, and I could tell she was on edge. "Unfortunately, while I was waiting for you, I met someone else and things got serious between us." "Is that the bitch from the amusement park?" she flared up. "I told you that Sharon is just a friend from the office," I said with a sigh, "and she's engaged to Henry. But yes, she's Sharon's friend." "Come on, you just couldn't wait to get into her pants." "It's not like that. She knows about our situation, and together we decided to hold back until I sorted out my feelings for you. I won't lie, it was hard. There were many nights when I wanted to just turn around and go back to her." "So what's changed?" Gail asked without looking up. "It was on our date. I realized that I just don't feel that connection to you anymore, and I'm still resentful of how our relationship fell apart. I'm sorry, Gail, but I'm going to get a lawyer and start the divorce process. I'll try be as fair as possible." Gail jumped up, a flash of rage on her face. "Well, that's it. The poor boy ran into a little trouble and abandoned ship. Go get your damn divorce, I don't care," she said, and then ran into her room and slammed the door. "Well, that's a failure," June said, and I shot her an angry look. "Sorry," she said. "This is not the time for bad jokes." "Okay," I said. "You were just trying to lighten the mood. I just don't think that's possible right now." We hugged. I kissed her on the cheek and headed to my car. I went straight to Marilyn, and she immediately understood my mood. "I guess it didn't go very well?" she asked. "That's putting it mildly," I said, falling into her arms and starting to cry as she rubbed my back. I just lay down on the bed. Marilyn pressed her back to me, wrapping her arms around me as if protecting me, and I fell into a restless sleep. Marilyn and I settled into a comfortable rhythm as the divorce worked its way through the courts. We haven't lived together yet. We told ourselves it was because of our leases, But in reality, it was because we didn't want to rush or complicate the divorce. Luckily, Gail didn't resist. According to June, she retreated to her world. She was still seeing Althea, but didn't seem to be making any real progress. Marilyn and I were still exploring each other in the bedroom. It wasn't always as wild as the first time, sometimes even wilder. Often it was soft and gentle. Sometimes we didn't have sex at all, just held each other close. It may seem cruel, but I began to think about Gail less and less, usually only when the divorce reminded me of itself. The next time I saw Gail was when the divorce became official. Despite my misgivings, Marilyn went with me. My judgment was proven correct when Gail saw Marilyn. I was afraid she would blow up the divorce right there, but she signed all the papers and stood up. Standing at the door, she said, "So this is that bitch. I hope she treats you the way you deserve." The sarcasm just dripped off of her, then turned and ran out of the office. "I'm so sorry," June said before running after her. My relationship with Marilyn continued to develop steadily. We soon began to live together, and she began to give subtle and not so subtle hints that she was ready for the next step. I still kept in touch with June, and, as expected, Gail relapsed after her divorce, but continued to attend Althea and was making progress again. I ended up proposing to Marilyn, and after talking to June, we decided it was best she didn't come to the wedding, let alone Gail. We got caught up in wedding preparations and didn't contact June until we returned from our honeymoon about 3 months later. When I finally called June, she had a lot to say, so we invited her to tell us all the details. "I think I should start from the beginning," June said. "As you know, Gail was very upset about the divorce." I know, that's a huge understatement. Anyway, everything was back to our new normal until Gail saw your engagement announcement in the newspaper. "Damn," I said. "I didn't even think about that." "Don't beat yourself up about it," she said. "Actually, it could be a good thing." "Eh?" Marilyn and I said at the same time. "I don't mean it the way it sounds, and of course it didn't start out like that. Gail was really out of her mind in pain, and Dr. Johnson and I were very concerned for her, but she eventually calmed down, but was very depressed. I took her to an appointment one day, and she was having a really bad day. She was completely overwhelmed, and I felt like there was nothing I could do. That's when Adam, the same guy I told you about, came over to console her. He had his arms around her as she cried, and then Adam's daughter Chloe walked out of Dr. Johnson's office. Although she herself had just been crying, she approached Gail to ask what was wrong with her. "I did a bad thing, honey, and now I'm suffering, and it hurts." "Why were you crying?" "My mother also did a bad thing. She doesn't live with us anymore, and I miss her." I didn't need to say that Gail could have guessed what Chloe's mom had done, and I think at that moment Gail actually realized what she had done. All the months of therapy, and one little girl broke through all her defenses, and she began to cry so much that Dr. Johnson had to come out and take her to his office. Adam, of course, had no idea what was going on, and I didn't know how to explain it to him, especially in front of Chloe. I also had selfish motives. I knew that he was attracted to Gail, and I was afraid that he might back down if Gail's story was revealed carelessly. Gail left the appointment early, too upset to continue the session. Little Chloe looked at her so sweetly and said, "My daddy always takes me out for ice cream after the doctor's appointment. Do you want to go with us?" Gail tried to refuse, but Adam convinced her to go. He also invited me, but I refused, asking him to please give Gail a ride, and he agreed. About an hour later, Adam pulled up, and the three of them walked up to the entrance, Gail and Adam holding Chloe's hands. When they reached the door, Gail smiled a real smile for the first time in months, thanking Adam for the ice cream, and Chloe hugged Gail's legs. After Adam and Chloe left, Gail walked in, and I swear she was glowing. "Someone clearly had a good time," I said. "Well, damn it," she said, "it's just ice cream." "Well, keep telling yourself that, maybe you'll even believe it," and I left. Gail and Adam have been on a few dates since then, and I've rarely seen her this happy. She didn't even notice when your wedding date passed. I've been babysitting Chloe, and she's just an adorable little girl. She's a really good influence on Gail. She really helped Gail see the pain of infidelity, and they could comfort each other. The only problem is that Gail hasn't told Adam what she did yet. I think he's suspicious, and I think he's actually dealing with it, but he needs her to open up about it. I talked and told her about this, but she is afraid. Maybe you can talk to her. Do you really think this is a good idea? We didn't break up on the best terms. I know, but who better to emphasize the value of honesty in relationships? I see your point. Let me think about it, okay? Yes, Kevin, of course, thank you. I discussed it with Marilyn, and although she was absolutely in favor, I had my doubts. After being persuaded by June and Marilyn, I reluctantly agreed and stopped by June's after work. Gail walked in with a big smile on her face until she saw me. Then all the joy disappeared from her face. "What is he doing here?" she asked bitterly. "Relax, Gail," June said. "I asked him to come." "And why did you do this?" "Maybe I can explain," I said nervously. "Yes, I suppose you can." I sighed. Maybe it really wasn't the best idea, but I felt like I owed Gail for all the good times. "Gail, June told me about you and Adam." Gail gave June an angry look. "So why are you here, going to tell him about the evil sinner, once a cheater, always a cheater?" "No, not at all. I'm here to encourage you to tell him." "What?" she cried. "Have you completely lost your mind? Do you want me to give up the best thing that ever happened to me?" The hidden meaning of her statement did not escape me. "No, I don't want you to give this up, but if you enter into a relationship without complete honesty, you risk losing everything. I understand that I may be the last person whose advice you would want to listen to, and I understand that. Why don't you talk to Dr. Johnson and see what she says? I don't expect you to believe me, but I really do wish you happiness, and from what June told me, you have a really good chance with Adam and Chloe. I hope you don't miss this chance." I hugged June and kissed her on the cheek, and although she tensed, I also hugged Gail. "Good luck, Gail," I said as I walked away. Gail actually talked to Dr. Johnson, took our advice, and told Adam about us. There were some difficulties. Adam was still suffering from his first marriage, but with Althea's help they got through it. Chloe helped too. Adam saw the real connection between her and Gail and didn't want to mindlessly destroy it. There hasn't been a wedding yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if it happens at any moment. Marilyn is pregnant with twins, and I hope to be as good a father to them as Adam is to Chloe. Gail and I maintain a polite, if chilly, relationship, and we sometimes meet at June's, where I prepare Chloe for the future challenges of childcare. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.